Great to be able to be with you today. Thank you so much for your time. This is a story that captivated all Canadians. I'd first like to get from you your plan, your recovery plan, any type of details in terms of where you expect capacity to be. You were at 10% of capacity during the strike. What are your expectations for tomorrow and next week?
Okay, thank you for having us, Catherine. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank all the support of our customers during that period of time, as well as all of our employees, and I really mean that, all of our employees who were acted very professionally, and everybody's back to work as of, after the news this week. So the plan is already unfolding. We started by the train, which were stage and stop in Canada. So we've started to move all these trains in direction of the final destination. The next step is moving the train that our stage on our U.S. network. Obviously, our new U.S. network was in operation, but we weren't bringing those trains in Canada, waiting for the strike to be done. So those trains which are on the U.S. network coming to Canada will be moving toward Canada tonight and tomorrow. And the local service to all of those who have local factories, manufacturing site, automotive plant, that we started across the country. So it will be first and foremost safety. To do this in a disciplined manner, because when you restart a network, you want to be very conscious of how you do step ABC to get the maximum effect ultimately. And so far so good. We're pleased with the people coming back to work. We're pleased with the attitude. We're pleased with how the last 36 hours go. And but it takes a little time. After eight days of limited amount of operation, as you mentioned, 10%. There's obviously a lot of pent-up demand that out there in the marketplace. That's looking for CN to move the product to market. But it might be 10 days, it might be 2 weeks, but we're very focused to get things back to normal.
It's interesting that you bring up how your employees are feeling, because what was interesting on so many fronts, but certainly one aspect was that this strike was not about wages. It was really about how your employees are feeling and the fatigue. And I want to play this clip for you and get your reaction to it. It is part of a tense exchange between a conductor and a chief rail traffic controller about how they were feeling, the fitness of the crew. If we can just play this and take a listen here.
I told you we're exhausted right from the get-go. We warned you, we told you that we were on the same page over 3 hours ago, maybe 4 hours ago now. And now I'm still talking to you about moving this train. I'm not refusing duty. I just need you to contact Transport Canada for me and my health and safety rep, please. Could you do that for me, Chief? And tell them why you're asking me to run this train in an unfit state. Over.
Okay, when you took your call, you need to be fit for 12 hours. Personal rest is not a regulatory or safety issue. So knowing that, are you refusing to bring the train to the rescue location? Over.
So, JJ, I would like to get your thoughts and your reaction when you heard that.
So I did watch that on the news. That was last Friday. And you have noticed that during the negotiation, we sort of kept out of the media, but pretty much by and large, because our focus, whether we agree or disagree, our focus was to make sure that we were creating an environment at the table to reach a settlement, and to reach a settlement acceptable to both parties as soon as possible. So with that in mind, we decided not to really get down to the detail of what this specific example was put in. We care very much deeply about the safety of our employee and their fatigue. We are engaged with the federal government in their current effort to review these regulations as it relates to railroaders in Canada, and we're going to be doing what's right. We really appreciate all the effort of our employees, including our conductors, the value they do, the work they do in wintertime, work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In the case of their trade, mostly outside. And we'll do the right thing. And
speaking of doing the right thing, I do want to follow up, because apparently that individual, that employee, was actually suspended for 14 days without pay.
Yeah. So there's obviously, as you go down the very detailed, there might be different views. But I don't want to take this example as kind of the one-off. Obviously, just having this clip, it doesn't come out very well. But we are focused on having safe operation. We're also focused on the operation, not just of our employee, but also the community. When train gets stranded on a network, we do have to find a way, one way or another, to get these trains to a place where they could be parked. safely and have the main line be able to move other freight or passenger freight, situation. This was a complicated situation. When I go into the detail, I think we're moving on. The discussion at the table also in that spirit of how do we create different ways so we can move on and be solution focused.
You have to get the solution that encompasses safety and safety of the employees, but also the communities that the trains go through, and also, of course, the commerce demands across the Canadian country. But let me ask you this: what those specifically will have changed to address the concerns of fatigue? Will you have more crews? How do you go through this? And what will be the costs and complexity associated with that?
Yeah. So we reached an agreement with the union leadership. The detail of these different things are confidential, pending ratification of the agreement. The union leadership will actually go, I think, from city to city to explain the agreement that we reached with them. And then they will ask their members, our employee, to vote on it. And it's during those discussions that they will share with our conductor's employee what was agreed at the table along the line that we just discussed. So I think I will leave it at this point to our union leader to share with our employee what was agreed at the table.
The strike notwithstanding, you have been pulling back as it relates to employees. Volumes have been down, most recently around 20%. You've pulled the fleet back by about 8% or so. At the same time, too, you've got to get back up to capacity. How do you kind of dovetail those different dynamics?
Yeah. So these are two separate issues. Before we were getting closer to strike or no strike with the conductors, the economy in Canada has already been slowing. And when I say the economy, I mean mostly since late summer, the manufacturing sector. We had a late crop in Western Canada. Natural resources being a challenge. The energy patch, Alberta namely, has been under duress. So that has been showing up in a reduction in our volume. We started the fourth quarter with very limited volume. That's why we had to take action to rolling stock, meaning locomotive and rail cars, as well as doing furlough for, if you move less freight, then we don't need as many people, as well as reduction in some of the management to be ready for a smaller, softer economy in the fourth quarter and 2020. As it relates to the recovery, because the demand right now is weaker than it would have been, say, in the peak of the demand, we should be in better shape, be able to recall people, take locomotive out of storage, and have network capacity to recover. So, if there is an upside in all this, CN mission is to move the economy. CN mission is to help grow the economy in Canada. And right now, we're very much in position to do that, especially now every employee is back. So that's going to be the focus between now and year end. And actually, we hope that the freight demand is going to be coming back at some point. Maybe not between now and Christmas, but sometime in 2020.
And can you take us a little bit behind the scenes in terms of how much pressure or what kind of pressure did the federal government put on you to end the strike somehow? Mm-hmm.
So this is not your usual labor negotiation between employee and management, where if this was a factory or if this was something in the retail sector, because in our case we're a major infrastructure company, probably one of the biggest infrastructure companies in Canada. A lot of the economy depends on us, and I think that's the one thing during this whole process. Many Canadians and many politicians will probably have seen exactly what we do and how we contribute. So in the middle of this, there was the economy. So we were even more focused to find a solution, not just for our employee and for our shareholders, but also the fact that in the middle, there was somebody called the Canadian economy who needs us to be able to perform. So that is obviously an extra dimension to when you have labor negotiation in a sector like ourselves, especially that CN is the bigger of the two rail company. And our country is so vast that we are a critical infrastructure in terms of making things happen in Canada. And
that was definitely something that came out. I mean, we here on BNN Bloomberg spoke to so many different associations that have been affected from so many communities across Canada, and how important it was to get back to work. But what was the federal government's role in this?
The federal government's role, I mean, in the end, what was helpful is the federal mediator that was appointed to this file. Very effective, very experienced, delicate file. As I said, we wanted to stay out of the media so that we improved the odds of coming to an agreement at the table, which is the way it happened. The federal government involvement, I would say, was really not active as it, because this was resolved at the table and nowhere else. As you mentioned, every strike is expensive. Of course, we lost some revenue during the meantime, and our unit costs were probably higher. We're going to have a restart here. We're going to restart for over the next 10 to 14 days. But the focus is, we're moving on. And I think our employee also, hopefully they will agree with the term that was negotiated by the union leaders. And our focus is back into how do we help the Canadian economy to get back on its feet quickly. Mm-hmm. And when you mentioned customers association, we talk to our customers all the time. Obviously, we talk to all of them even more so during those 8 days. We're going to talk to them quite a bit during the next 2 weeks. And everything that I've seen reported on BNN and the other station is something that we were acutely aware, and I would say even acutely aware of before the strike starts. So we're very aware of the impact and the role that we play in the economy.
And many people who we did interview here on BNN Bloomberg made the comment that they didn't have another alternative. It's not that it's not easy to just switch. But have you lost any clients? Are you expecting to perhaps lose a few clients somehow?
Yeah. No, I think obviously there's some business that have found some other ways to get to market, either through other channel or the customers himself reduce production, so he may not be able to make it back up. But when you look at the midterm, no, we haven't lost business, and the focus is really to the extent that we can help our customers to catch up. There's quite a bit of inventory in some of these places, that they've kept producing. Because there was a risk of a potentially work stoppage that we may not have been able to come to a conclusion at the table, we had to warn our customers a good 7 to 10 days before the deadline that if they could pre-ship or if they could take more empty cars on their site, to have some contingencies. So all of our customers, we bring them in the loop when we get to these situations so that we don't leave them stranded. So they too had their contingency plan and the exercise to the extent that they can. It doesn't mean that it resolved the problem. It just means that everybody's trying to find a way to mitigate the situation while negotiations take place, resolution come in, and then we restart as safely and as fast as we can.
What was the key factor, though, that brought the two sides together? Because there really was an unknown in terms of how long this was going to go on for. Some people thought that it would actually be much shorter. And then, of course, we've seen the numbers from various economists that are saying if this prolonged any further, it would have been more like a $5 billion hit to the economy. What was the key factor that brought you together?
Yeah. I was watching some of these economists comment. I think many of them probably don't understand enough what we do. The range that they've offered was quite wide, but we are definitely very important to the economy, agriculture sector, the port business, export of natural resource, energy moving out of Alberta, trade with the United States, and it is significant, no question. We are a major infrastructure company. You cannot replicate this infrastructure, quickly. You cannot rebuild other railroad. Nobody will be able to get permits and land. So we have to do the best what we have, and we have to find ways to try to mitigate the situation where there is a work stoppage for any reason. At the same time, one has to be respectful of the right to negotiate, and I think that was also the message from the government is, the two parties at some point needs to find a way to come to term. And then the one thing that they've offered that was very supportive, appreciated by us, is a federal mediator who worked very hard with all the parties to eventually find a way that we could resolve this in that case after 8 days.
And because of the importance on both sides, so important in terms of fatigue and safety, and also as it relates to what CN provides for the country's economy, where do you stand as it relates to whether or not the rails should be deemed an essential service in order for this to not happen again?
Yeah, so now you get into a legal definition of what is essential services. I think strictly from an economic point of view, we are obviously very important, very critical to the Canadian economy, at least the economy that's, the product that we make, manufacturing, agriculture, mining, natural resource, and the product that we consume, that the consumer economy consume. But at the same time, this is where you need to have the balance between that and the right to negotiate. So I think that decision as whether or not we are a critical infrastructure from a legal point of view is a decision for the politician, for the Canadian population to decide where this thing has to go. But obviously, from an economic point of view, it was 8 days was probably as long as this thing could last.
JJ, what's your last message or your message to, a combination really of the government, in particular, you say it's a political issue, which perhaps it is as it relates to whether or not this should be deemed an essential service, number one. Also to your employees, your message, and also, of course, to shareholders, a lot of constituents that you are addressing right now.
Yeah. So to our employee, we're happy that they're back. It's unfortunate that we had a work stoppage. We've renewed quite a few labor contracts this year without having to go to that extent. We renewed a contract with 7,000 of our employees with similar wage pattern as what this one might be. Again, we weren't very vocal during the negotiations. So I mean, there's different views that we may have, how much of that was related to safety, to fatigue, and to overall compensation package. But the union leader will provide to their members or employee what they negotiated with us, and then they will see that I think there's a fair package on the table for them to vote in favors. In terms of our customers, again, we're focused on growth. We're focused on moving the economy. There's absolutely no change on that. The last 2 years, we invested huge amount of capital to increase the capacity of the network, especially our Western network, where the railroads are the most important infrastructure to move goods to market, especially goods to export market. And to our shareholders, a reminder that these things may happen from time to time. They've happened in the past. I think since the IPO in 1995, we had 2 strikes that involved the conductors. So not the best outcome, but they typically are short. And as soon as we come back, we're back to the same objective. When you own, if you're shareholders and you own CN, you're basically owning a stock in the Canadian economy. We would be a proxy of the Canadian economy, especially as it relates to manufacturing, natural resource, agriculture, but also moving the goods that the Canadian consumers consume when it comes to intermodal. So the future looks bright. This was a significant bump in the road, but we're back.
And JJ, I just want to follow up, and I can appreciate your position as CEO of CN Rail, but do you as an individual think that the rails should be deemed an essential service, if you can separate the two?
Again, yeah. So I would be an individual who would be biased. I think the people whose view should be considered are the user of the rail network, as well as the people who work in the rail industry. And I think that's basically, the two sides. People who work in the rail industry, which is a very, very highly unionized segment, and people who use the rail industry, which is a critical infrastructure program for the country. So I think it's not a question for either side to have the last say. It's a question for elected officials to decide what's best for the country.
All right. JJ, great to be able to catch up with you. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I know it's been a very, very busy 8 days, so thank you.